Subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell icon for the latest film interviews, features, and recommendations on the movies that matter. Good to see you, Anurag. Thank you, and welcome to the film club of the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne. This is the 11th edition of the festival. It's the 11th year. This year, of course, due to COVID and due to the times that we're in, there's a slightly different format to the lead up to the festival, which will happen in October. We are, of course, using Zoom to create this film club where we're chatting with some of our favorite filmmakers. And we're so excited that you said yes to do this. Because really, Anurag, and I think everyone who's participating today will agree that I think what you've done, words that so much has been said about Anurag that it's hard to add on more. But I think what is very important is that what you have done is you've expanded the definition, the traditional definition of what Bollywood meant. And I think that especially in the context of the world, when outsiders, non-Indians or even Indians living outside of India look at Bollywood, there was a traditional definition. And what your cinema has done is really expanded that definition. And thank you, because that has yielded such incredible films over the years. I also want to give a little bit of trivia. You attended the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne in 2016 with your film Raman Raghav. I think Nawazuddin Siddiqui and you were there together, and Nawaz won Best Actor that year at the festival. Yes. So, so your sort of your family, your IFFM family. But I'm going to jump straight into the conversation. Anurag, you were shooting a film in the mountains when the country went into lockdown, weren't you? Now, of course, we've been in lockdown for over 4 months. Anurag, what have you achieved creatively in this period?
Nothing. Zilch.
But you said you've been writing, no?
I've been writing in the sense I've never struggled with writing so much. Also, I'm writing one of my most difficult scripts ever, because my writing is normally 3 to 4 days, right, and which is how I write my first draft, and then I go from there. And this time it's been 4 months, and I've been struggling to write because it's actually a tough one. And that month, for first month I was very good. First month I was just revisiting what inspired me to cinema. I went back to 1994 and and watched all the old classics of Hitchcock and Vaida and Disika and Fritz Lang and everything. And then after that, I stopped watching so much, and then the struggle started. And nothing. It's just been a lot of struggle actually. But yeah, I try to set things up. My new library is being set up, and I'm just waiting another 3 more days left before my entire house becomes Dolby surround, and wow, I can then start watching again.
Anurag, has any of the new writing been inspired by the pandemic? I mean, have you has the pandemic, have these times kind of found their way into your cinema?
No, I've just kind of written something. I've just kind of ideated and written something that will have a lot to do with this lockdown, because this lockdown has been both good and bad in the sense. This is the first time. This is the most first pause that I have taken in 27 years. Wow. So I've realized that I've been working non-stop, and when my first film Paanch got stuck, right, and I waited for Paanch to come out, and Black Friday, the pain was so much that I decided never to wait for anything. Mm-hmm. So since Black Friday, I finished shooting Black Friday, I started another thing, and I never stopped. I'd have done some inane work also at that time, but I never stopped working. So this pause made me realize that I have actually never grieved on any kind of a failure. It has become my survival method. I have never savored any kind of a success. I just kept moving on from one project to the other. And this unnatural pause has taken me back to everything. It's taken me back to everything. So it's been both good and bad. And that is what I'm trying to pour into what I'm trying to write.
But Anurag, the way that we watch films or the way that we consume entertainment has changed fundamentally in this period. I mean, across the world. Do you think that it is also going to have an effect on how we choose to watch films once this is all over and once we can go to the cinemas? Do you think
it is change? No, it is. The change was imminent. I'm saying, pandemic or not non-pandemic, there was our viewing habits were changing. And way back in 2012, I had foreseen that, and I had started working towards this. Yeah. And like how I told you, like my house will become Dolby surround. So I've redone my house where I'll be watching cinema.
Hmm.
So and
Correct.
literally and people who are experts who have done that, where you have a flooring that absorbs the sound, where the door will absorb the sound, the curtains that absorb sound, so neighbors don't get disturbed when you're playing a movie in Dolby Surround. And now I can watch everything. Everything is a cinema experience for me. I have the best projector and everything, and because I've got it, that means somebody else was getting it and somebody recommended it to me, and people have opened business like this,
Right.
right? So where my bedroom, if I'm watching anything on television in my bedroom, that's also Dolby Surround. So I'm
Hmm.
Dolby Surround living room, Dolby Surround bedroom. Here is a big screen, there is a small screen, but that's how I'm going to be. Just cinema, 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 and my
You
entire
know, and
house is now a library.
even for those, Anurag, that can't necessarily turn their homes into cinemas, I mean, it
It's
has changed.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry,
it
sorry,
has
no.
changed and it is available at every cost. See, what is
Wow.
happening is
Right.
people who watch things on cell phones,
Hmm.
so now they're getting the virtual reality masks,
Right.
which are very cheaply available, where you put your phone in
Hmm.
and you get a full experience of sitting in a cinema hall and watching a film. So it's
Right.
not like that I'm saying, it's like maximum, it's like IMAX. So when
Correct.
in those virtual reality masks will be used to watch cinema.
Hmm.
So the filmmakers and content creators don't have to worry. We have to continue creating cinema. People will watch where they like to watch.
Actually, I was going
Cinemas,
to ask you that. How does this change the way that y'all are going to make films going forward? The fact that so much is
it's
being
not.
consumed at home,
Yeah.
will that have an effect on how y'all make cinema and what y'all make?
No, I don't think so. I think it will only become much more braver because one now, see, the biggest problem with cinema so far as a filmmaker I've seen was access. So
Right.
when my film would come out, people would access it at their own time by downloading it when there was no streaming service. With the streaming service, it has opened up. Suddenly my viewership has gone up. And I can see the
Right.
results in the way, for me, various studios from Hollywood or Paris or Germany, they're interested in working with me. So
Right.
for me, it has only become way, way, way better because I don't now need to go to anybody to make anything, right? So what is happening is now my access is increased. More
Right.
people are watching it, and people can see it as cinema projected on screen. People can see it the way they want to. People can use a cell phone to maximize effect, so it doesn't become like if I'm watching something on a cell phone like this, that's not cinema to me. That's
Right.
I would not want somebody. But if you put it on a virtual reality camera, it becomes
Hmm.
cinema. You can sit back and watch a film, and you have proper sound in your ear. So I'm saying it access has increased for me. So because of increased access,
Hmm.
I get braver because as a filmmaker, because I can make very intimate films. Because people can choose to watch it, and the audience that doesn't want to watch an intimate film, they don't want to have to watch it. But still, the number of audience that I can reach out to has increased.
Correct.
And people, since they will watch in the privacy of their homes,
Hmm.
and it's not a public thing, it makes me go out and explore more.
Right. Right. Anurag, over the years, you seem to have been fascinated by stories about crime, and if not
Yeah,
crime, then certainly about the dark side of human nature.
yeah,
Right from Satya, which was your breakout film as a writer, up until Choked, which dropped recently on Netflix, and Sacred Games, the show. I know that you've said that you don't sit down with the idea to write a film about crime, but you've
yeah,
said that you inevitably find yourself curious to explore why human beings do the things that they do, which are sometimes
yeah,
amoral,
yeah.
sometimes criminal. Why do you tend? I mean, have you, looking back, have you been able to sort of come to terms with why you think you're fascinated by that side of human beings?
I think I just like things to be real. Like even when I'm approaching romance,
Hmm.
I just want it to be real sometimes. And
Correct.
the whole idea of cinema that impacted me and wanting me to be a filmmaker was because of my lack of access to travel. I got my passport when Black Friday was supposed to go to Locarno. Till then, I didn't have a passport, so I never traveled. So my way to travel the world was through cinema. My way to travel the world was through books.
Hmm.
And what I would do is I would watch films to visit places and time, not just city, but in time. So when I see De Sica, when I saw Bresson, when I saw Melville, I saw a way of life. I saw a time, and it was as if, like for me, the impact was I'm experiencing these things. because of which when I make films, so even if it's totally fictional, I want a sense of time and place in the film. So that what happens is, like in the future, one will want to see about the world. So you pick up a film and you know that this time Bombay was like this. At that
Correct.
time, this area of Bombay was like that. So I never revisit a place until unless, like for Sacred Games, I had to revisit a lot of locations I had used in Black Friday. But
Hmm.
other than that, I never revisit a area of the city that I'm exploring. So for me, it's very important I create a sense of time and place and a sense of realism that comes in even in a fictional story, even if it has music. So that music also, some when we sit down and create music, it has a sense of politics in it. So a lot
Right.
of my politics is in the songs, is in the music, which talks about the time. And I like the grace. I like because nobody's perfect. You know, we all are vulnerable to something. We all are can like we all have highs and lows in life. We all rise and fall. And I want things to be human. And so, which is where crime sets in, which is where crime comes in, which is what
Right.
the biggest impact of my 1994 phase that I talk about of
Hmm.
Dostoevsky was. It's the impact of Dostoevsky and Camus and everything that I read when I was 20, 21 years old. So that was the phase when me and Mitu used to meet almost every day.
Right. You know, early on in your career, Anurag, you had huge setbacks. I mean, after being hailed as the hotshot new writer, with Satya, your first film as director Panch never got released. It still remains unreleased. Black Friday ran into trouble. That release got held much longer than it was meant to. You got a chance to work with a big star like John Abraham in No Smoking, but that film bombed. You've called these your angsty years. Anurag,
Hmm.
were you a very different person then from what you are today?
I'm not much in the sense I now understand how to channelize things. I'm much more of a realist now in the sense like,
Hmm.
yes, I was angsty because the world was also very different.
Correct.
At that time, the world was very different. The world has changed since. And at that time, I felt like, why is it that I'm made to believe constantly that what I do or want to say, nobody wants to hear? Whereas I knew that people wanted to hear that,
Hmm.
which is not so true anymore. Today, people want, and you realize with social media that the majority of people that in many ways don't agree with you, with mainstream as well. So
Right.
I'm saying,
Correct.
suddenly those lines have blurred. And that
Hmm.
has made me more like, it has given me a kind of an objectivity. So I step back and watch things. And 27 years of journey, I've seen so many people come and go. I've seen so much within this industry. And you realize 27 years is actually nothing. In that short period of time, you see so much that it looks so large. Now imagine people whose entire journey is 8 to 9 to 10 years. And like, suddenly you're like, I wish somebody can tell them there's a much larger truth out there.
Right.
And that's what it is. That is what has made me. So my angst has found channel.
Right.
And I don't like, for me, it's like my biggest critics are my friends. And
Hmm.
and then the same thing. And I don't have a problem with that. I really, but
Yeah.
in the sense, today I don't go
Actually,
back and
you're
say,
you're
Arey,
very sporting with, yeah. You're actually very open to criticism. You've always
I'm
been,
very, oh
actually.
yeah,
That's something that's never changed. Yeah.
not just open to criticism. I embrace my critics because that makes me better. Because they're
Hmm.
like also like my peers. Like for me, my critics and my filmmakers,
Yeah.
friends, their opinions actually matter to me more than the audiences. Audiences will experience something, they're expecting something, and the expectations might be broken or not broken. But with others, I can discuss. Others, I
Right.
can talk, which is a learning for me.
Right.
Which for me, I actually collect, and I like whatever positive criticism comes in, I collect it. It's always a learning for me, and I don't intend to stop. matlab, in the sense, I intend to make a lot many movies.
I think you're the only filmmaker who retweets even negative reviews if it's well written and if it's an
Yeah,
interesting point of view. I've noticed you even
yeah.
retweet the negative. Nobody ever does that. Uh, Anurag, if one were to compare making a film to giving birth, which is a very common sort of analogy,
Hmm.
which film of yours has put you through the most grueling labor?
Uh, Most grueling film for me actually was, I would say, Bombay Velvet,
Hmm.
because one, it was done in a way that I don't normally do it, and there was
Correct.
there's so much scrutiny. Because it's like after that, if you see all my films I made so quietly that people never found out.
Right.
Because everybody was constantly watching and everything being reported, and you feel naked all the time. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
wait. And then the expectations get built up and this and that. So I like people to be surprised by you see, when my trailer comes out, that's when you know I made a film.
Right.
So I don't like to talk about it. I have whereas the films that I have enjoyed the most were actually Black Friday, Gulal. Gulal was emotionally very taxing because we didn't know how we'll finish it. It went on and on and on. And Gangs of
Hmm.
Wasipur, 4 months everybody was together. We had a terrible tragedy during Gangs of Wasipur and lost our first AD, but it is a very emotional experience for everybody involved. We keep going back to those memories because we had nothing. We were
Correct.
staying in these very small shanty hotels, traveling like 10 in a row in a jeep to make that film, traveling 6 hours to get one shot. So I'm saying to make the film look expansive.
Right.
Simultaneously, second unit working, shooting 2 hours of chase every day. So it was a very satisfying experience, and that was also a time when we had this whole kind of a community feeling because so many things were done from a small office. Vasan was making peddlers, and Ritesh was making lunchbox, and Amit was making monsoon shootout, and the kind of atmosphere there was, and there was just a kitchen, and the guy was just making big things full of rice and dal and sabji and just that, and everybody would come together and eat. That atmosphere was beautiful. So I'm saying, like, those are the things that I sometimes miss, and I try to recreate that on my set. But now it's like, now I have come to a point where I kind of have isolated myself. I'll work
Hmm.
separately, I hire separately, because there's just so much happening and ambitions have no control. So anybody's ambitions can take them anywhere. So I am like, I'm very content with what I do. So my thing is like, I'll hire ambition for a project
Right.
for a certain time, and that's it. So I'm not going to create a kind of an atmosphere where anybody becomes ambitious and goes in their own direction. So
Right.
there's been learning. There's been a learning.
Sure. I want to ask about specific films which I know that all the fans here love. Dev D Anurag, when that came out in 2009, and it sort of became a turning point, didn't it? Because that was the first one that was actually declared a commercial hit.
Yeah.
What did that do for your confidence? Coming off being told repeatedly that you can't make successful films, what you're interested in telling, people are not interested in listening to. And Devdi was an uncompromised vision. It's not like you sort of you towed the line to make that film. You made the film that you wanted to make, and it was successful. What did that do for your confidence when that film was a success?
Actually, I'll tell you, Devdi's success kind of, the way people reacted to Devdi, it kind of confused me. Because see, Devdi came out of a reaction to no smoking and everything. So
Hmm.
I was, in the sense, it was like, okay, what do you want? You want a love story? I'll give you a love story. You want songs? I'll give you so many songs you don't know what will you do with it. So it was like that. And then we were playing around with a lot of things. So it was also a very risky film in the sense we thought that we don't know whether we'll pull it off or not. And we had one internal screening before the film came out. And I know that like some people from the office were watching it, and one guy totally slept. He just slept. And I was like scared. I was like, oh my God, he slept. So it was not the finished version. And but the thing is, Zarina she was running Hangama.
Correct.
What Bindas,
Right.
Bandis, Bindas. Her reaction was so exhilarated. She hit the roof. She says, "Oh my God, this is the film we want. That's the only film Bindas has ever associated with and presented." And Zarina's
Right.
reaction was so strong that I think if any reservation Ronnie or anybody had, it kind of went down. And Zarina took it on herself to I'm gonna pitch this film. This film is for us.
Correct.
And
Well,
when
she
it
was
came
onto
out,
something clearly.
yeah. But the thing is, I remember we had a massive premiere at Chandan, and I was petrified. And I had people like Rajat Kapoor was watching the film, and some art house filmmakers were there. Some of our PFC members were there, who are harshest critics, and then like some industry people were there, trade people who never liked me. So I
Right.
was stressed. I did not dare enter the cinema. I entered in the beginning to see the reaction to the trailer of Gulal, and I stepped out. And after that, when the move, and we were having a drink outside, me and my producer, and suddenly the Nikhat Kazmi's 5-star review came out. And I went crazy. I was like, what? We got 5-star reviews. How much are people loving the film? And when it got over, Rajat Kapoor came out, like, what have you done? And this and that. So it kind of confused me. I was like, I didn't know how to deal with it. And then soon after Gulal came out, and back to back, people were started like reviewing. My reaction to that was Girl in Yellow Boots. I was like, I can't deal with this. I'm so used to failure and rejected. I'm going to make my most extreme film. And UTV gave me a nine film deal, and I said I want to make Girl in Yellow Boots, and our 9-film deal got cancelled. So my reaction was very ulta. I went and made Girl in Yellow Boots because I didn't want to. I thought this is one time to make my most personal film that nobody wanted to make. I remember Zoya said, "Babe, you're very dark, man. This is too dark. Don't go there. Don't go there." And I'm like, "No, but I want to do this. I have to get it out
It's
of my
incredible
system."
to. It's also incredible to do it at that time when you could have sort of, I mean, you could have made the kind of films that would have taken you down the populist route. And again, populist, I mean, it's not like you were going to make Dilwale Dulhania, but you could have made sort of more accessible films, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying I've always learned that when something really becomes successful, you should take out your darlings that nobody will touch. Which is why after Gangs of Wasseypur, I went and made Ugly.
Right.
So
Which
Ugly,
I have to tell you, and I think I've told you this many times, is one of my favorite films. I also think it's your most cynical film. It's probably one of the darkest, but I think that film is just so true to the world that you set up, and it really explores. I mean, since we're talking about dark themes, it really goes into the darkness that resides in our hearts, in the hearts of people.
No, it does. It definitely does. But things don't happen as you plan them, because I've realized that after like Yellow Boots now, and I wanted to just make a commercial movie for cinema hall. I'm like, बहुत हो गया फेस्टिवल से कुछ मिल नहीं रहा है. फेस्टिवल में जाके हम लोग घूम फिर के आते हैं, लेकिन फिल्म रिलीज ही नहीं हुई, because Yellow Boots didn't release for so long. So we went and shot Gangs of Wasseypur. मैंने कहा this time it will be like a thorough entertainer, and we were doing it at a very low cost. And I remember we were pitching Lunchbox at the Berlin market at the festival and Marco Muller came and met me, and he had seen some portion of the edit, and he brought in Eduardo, and he says, he wants to see your 6-hour epic. So I said, but that's a very commercial film. I said, no, but he wants to see it. I said, but why do you want to see it? It's my masala movie. I made it so that I can make some money to make other films. It's not a festival film. He says, can you let us decide that? Okay. So I had one rough edited version on a DVD, which I gave him. And then suddenly from everywhere, we started getting calls on Wasseypur. I'm like, hello, this is my most commercial film. And I wanted to work in box office, and it became a festival breakout. So no, you cannot plan that. For me, I had thought Yellow Boots would be my festival breakout, but Wasseypur became the breakout. Yellow Boots opened the market for me. So every film serves a purpose, and you can't decide that. You never know what works and what doesn't work.
Gangs of Wasseypur, Anurag, both parts, of course, came out the same year in 2012. It really is your godfather in a sense, isn't it? The big gangster epic that everyone fell in love with. I was looking at the trailer today, and you realize that so many actors that we love today had bit parts. I mean, breakout. Those became the breakout roles. I mean, Jaideep Alawat, Pankaj Tripathi, or even Nawazuddin, for whom actually that was the big breakout film, Gangs. The only star in that film actually was Manoj Bajpayee, and even for him, it was a sort of comeback kind of movie. Anurag, can you talk about directing actors and your process with actors? Because the one thing that I think all of us have heard and read listening to actors is they say that Anurag actually allows you to do what you want. As long as you stay within the framework of what the scene needs to convey, you actually give them a lot of freedom.
I work with actors the same way I work with my crew. Because, in the sense, my main work ends at crewing up and casting.
Right.
So when I have picked up I pick up the right people for the role. I pick up the right crew for the role. And you know what? Deep down, I know that, like when I was struggling to do something, I know I always wanted to do my best. And I always got disappointed by the compromises people I was doing my best for. The reason I would walk away from films and people was because I could see them compromise from what they could have done from. But I, as a person, always wanted to do my best in everything. And I believe the same about other people. So when I hire people, I hire people who want to do their best and they feel lost. I pick them up. And then I know and I put them together and I give them space because I like to explain everything. So I will explain everything to them before we go even into the shoot. And after that, I'm just in the moment. I want everybody to be in the moment. And so I don't tell them anybody what to do. I tell them what not to do. So my way of working is don't do this, don't do that. So I never tell them what to do. And they automatically like give me their best. It's a very simple philosophy. You collect a bunch of people who want to give it their best shot. You will not end up with anything that's kind of any less than what you expect. And you give them that space to do their best. And I just keep telling them, I say no. Like, so for example, my cinematographer is saying, like, I'm thinking, let's do this. I said, that will be too much. Don't do that. That's the most I will say. But that's freedom and empowerment that the team feels brings out their best. It's always, it is very simple.
That's not the conventional way of that a lot of filmmakers work with their actors. There's fairly, there's usually a structure to, this is how they want them to act, even if, and one has heard stories of directors who actually enact scenes for actors as well.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, how long does it take for your cast to kind of get into that, especially when you're working with people that you haven't worked with before, how long does it get them to kind of adapt to this style where they have this huge freedom?
3 to 4 days. First 3 to 4 days. Sometimes the very first day they get shocked. Like the longest scene and the most recalled scene of the police station from Ugly was the first day of shoot. Correct. First day of shoot, and actors did not know what happened. But that prepared them for everything.
That scene is the one between Rahul Bhatt and Girish Kulkarni. That is just such an incredible scene.
Yeah, and that scene was totally improvised. It was totally improvised. The very first take was 14 minutes long. I just did not say cut. And I just gave them different briefs. And what came out was so much more magical. So my thing is like, I don't give a collective brief to everybody. So I give individual brief to actors. So I tell each actor, like suppose you and me are talking. I don't know your questions. You don't know my answers. So this will become like a natural conversation. So that's why what I do is with every actor, I give them different briefs only for them and throw them together. And what comes out is the scene.
How much of the film is in your head, Anurag? And how much of it sort of emerges from these experiments?
See, everything is in my head. So for me, it's like what I'm writing right now, if I'm not dealing with a lot of people who want to see the script beforehand, I can just start shooting tomorrow.
Correct.
But for me, it's like everybody else has that disadvantage. Right. So everybody else is like, but what are we going to prepare for? What are the actors we need? Everything. I can just take anything and go into the shoot. For me, my mind works the best there. So it is all in my head, and it also emerges in the process more. A lot of things keep emerging in the process. So I'm saying, for example, the film I was shooting and the lockdown happened, and the film is very current. So it can't be done without what's going on. So that is extended now. It has become a much bigger film.
Okay. More. You spoke briefly about Bombay Velvet. I want to say when Bombay Velvet came out, Anurag, in 2015 and it failed, one of the common things, one of the recurring things that the industry kept saying is, this is what happens when you give a small budget filmmaker a huge budget and you give him big stars. He doesn't know how to handle it and he messes up. But that's unfair, because the truth is that the budget was on the screen. You saw the budget on screen, and actually you used your actors in ways that they hadn't been challenged before. I mean, both Ranbir and Anushka, I mean, even they talk about just the process of it, even if it didn't work. Now that you look back, Anurag, are you able to, and is that helpful? I mean, are you able to look back and realize what went wrong? Is that something that a filmmaker can and should do?
No, absolutely. I would say it is the budget that went wrong. I'm saying I could have made the same film for much lesser money. I just made life easy for me. In the sense, I'm not used to it. Like, see, my philosophy has been, when you go make a film, right? You're not on a holiday. You're going to work, right? But that film was a holiday. We're staying in a resort and we're traveling in our Mercs on the set and everything. I'm saying that's not, I would have much rather made the same film with Because if the budget was less, my film could have been longer, and I would have traveled and put the pieces together to create a sense of Bombay. Like how Anurag Basu created a sense of in Barfi. He shot in
Correct.
pieces everywhere. I have that skill. Like how I did Wasipur. It doesn't look small. It looks
Correct.
massive without money spent on it. The
Correct.
disadvantage was because you can do that with unknown people. But Ranbir and Anushka and Karan are like such known faces. I can't hide them anywhere. And since I couldn't hide them, we had to create a set. So the only thing, if the, I mean, I can very easily pull off the same film at all less than half the cost, provided I had faces of in space where people respected the space of the actor. Unfortunately, you can't do that in India. But outside India, when Hollywood filmmakers shoot,
Yeah.
there's a system in place where they can shoot on the street and people won't walk in and look into the camera or want to take a selfie. They leave them alone. The actors walk the street like normal people. India people are obsessed with actors. So because of it, and this is something that Martin Scorsese told me. He says, bigger the budget, there's more democracy in the edit room, and democracy is not good for films. He
Right.
says, for
It
films,
has
you
to be a
need
singular
somebody, one
vision.
person's
Yeah.
point of yeah.
Correct.
So I'm saying that's what happens. And because it was the bigger budget, there was more insecurity, there was more scrutiny. And because of that insecurity, slowly you start taking a step back, and then you start getting confused. And then suddenly, you don't realize that when the transition happens from making the film I've been wanting to make to focus on getting a first 3-day opening. You don't realize that when that happens. And it all happens only because the budget is so huge and it's being thrown at you every day.
Correct.
So that figure of 90 crores and 120 is what is thrown at me every day. Even now, when they talk about the film, they don't talk about the film. They talk about 90 and 120. I'm like, so that is the problem. I still think that was the problem. Nothing else was the problem. If we were shooting the same film in another world, people would have respected the space of the actors. But I want to shoot in India, which is why you see when, say, an Imtiaz Ali takes an actor like Ranbir and shoots abroad and makes a rock star, he can, because they're given that space to shoot. But he cannot do those same things in open at places in India. So that's the big difference, because of which we had to create a set, and then everything went out of control. Because actors were tremendous and they gave everything. So it's just the budget. It's just the budget, I would say.
You know, music, Anurag, plays such a big part in your cinema. Your partnership with Amit Trivedi's, from Devdi onwards, is actually one of the finest filmmaker-composer partnerships since maybe Mani Ratnam and A.R. Rahman. You both inspired each other creatively and done incredible work together. What is the process? What is your collaboration like? How do you all work?
See, I don't stop working. So
Right.
for me, I give a brief of what I want to do next with Amit Trivedi, which is generally 2-3 years in advance.
Right.
And I said, this is what you need. This is what genre we're exploring next. So when we finished Devdi, I said, Abhi, you work here, there. He worked for my production. I said, me and you will work on jazz. So I collected a whole lot of jazz material and gave it to him in 2009.
Wow.
I said, whatever we are doing next is built around jazz. I wanted to study jazz. And that came Bombay Velvet. After Bombay Velvet, when I came on to Manmarzi, I told Anand Rai, because the film was already being done before, I said,
Right.
I don't want to see what has been done. I don't want to hear what music has been done. I want to do it my way. So we had a longer brief. I said, that film had 3-4 songs. I said, my thing, I'm seeing it musically. And I want to go in there. And I talked to Amit and Shelly, and I said, go to Punjab. Find the sound in Punjab and bring that back to me before I even sit down and get into the script. So we spent 1 year on the music before we even got onto the script or casting. And whatever is coming next, for which we have already done almost all the music over last 3 years. But I was listening to the sound with gibberish while I was shooting Mukkavas in 2017. That music has taken 4 years to evolve, and it has come to a place now, which is the film that I have been doing quietly. So which is another zone, totally another zone. And like, I'm so proud of that music. Whenever I kind of play it in the house and somebody else says, where is this from? I said, I don't know. And everybody like, this is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. So that's what it is. It takes time. Like with Sneha, I spent 3 years creating Gangs of Wasseypur. So I
Correct.
spend that time, and in between process, I find new sounds and new voices. Somebody
Hmm.
has haven't worked with. So I'll find a new guy and I'll say, let's do a smaller film together
Right.
and spend time on that. But maybe I'd spend like 1 year at least on music. And
You know,
music also
Anurag, you
serves a purpose because everything that I cannot say in the film directly, I say it
right
I put it in the song.
songs, and that actually came out so beautifully in Manmarziyan actually, which it was I mean, easily the best soundtrack of last year. I mean, absolutely the best soundtrack. But Anurag, you've also been instrumental over the years in producing some extraordinary films by younger or newer filmmakers. You know, Udan, Shaitan, The Lunchbox, Queen, Hunter, Masan, Urta Punjab. Some, of course, you produced, in a solo capacity, and some under the Phantom banner, which of course you launched with your friends. Why, Anurag, has it been important for you to mentor and enable new filmmakers?
I don't
Why is that a
mentor them
big
as
part
my.
of your?
Yeah, it is. For me, it's a very big part of me. Like outsiders are a very big part of me because I think diversity only makes us better. Because and a new person brings with him or herself their own voice. Any new filmmaker will bring with. There's so many films that we could not do because when we were at Phantom and the
Right.
structure became a combination with Reliance and everything became commercial. There's so many films I look at and I like, this was our film, ye hamari film thi. We couldn't
Correct.
do it. Like everything from a Mard Ko Dar Nahi Hota to Death in a Ganj to Pari and everything. I'm like, I chew my nails because I'm considered like, you're the guy who will always lose money. So we are not listening to you guys. But there's so many filmmakers that I see around and I try to enable them. I don't mentor them. When I hear
Hmm.
their voice and the voice is interesting, I want to enable them because it challenges me. Anything I'm jealous of, I want to put my name on it. I will, because I want to be like, what challenge me now. And it makes me a better filmmaker, nothing. And I like more outsiders because this diversity that we see today is because of all these very strong individual voices. I never try to control them. I will not
Right.
tell them how to do it. And sometimes they lose themselves. Sometimes they're in a hurry and they lose themselves also. So it's not always people know what who did not lose themselves, but there are also people who have lost themselves in the process. And some people give up. But it is so amazing to see the young filmmakers who become so fearless because I remember my struggle days. Nobody has done more ghostwriting than me, right? But I could do it. I could do it because I would write non-stop 3 4 days 5 days. For me it's just 5 days of work now. Chalo gaya. But the thing is, I'm not bitter about it. But it has taught me so. The world has changed since then. Today, I like to fight for everybody's credit. I'm saying somebody put in 5 lines and 5 ideas, his name will also go in as a writer. So,
Yeah.
more the people come in, this industry has become such an equalizing experience. Look at today, no? Ayushmann Khurrana is a star, Rajkumar Rao is a star. 10 years back, do you think Rajkumar Rao, this industry or this audience would have made them a star? Like Irfan Khan was just about breaking out into the mainstream in a massive way when he passed away.
Correct.
I'm saying all these things, they're all people coming from everywhere and they know they can come in there because this is not no more like how I told my father I want to go into movies. I said, Beta, pagal ho gaya kya? Today you know that it can be a future, it can be a career. And there's so many more options. There's web series, there's television, there's media, there's this, that. There's so many avenues to it. And it is now being taught in colleges. There's a
Correct.
mass communication course in
Of
colleges,
course.
which was
Right.
in there no, when we came in.
Yeah.
So it is because of outsiders. There's engineers, doctors who've dropped out because they want to make films. How many engineers and doctors and MBA students we have in the industry? We have people from the defense forces who have dropped out and like have joined the industry because they wanted to do that and they want the courage to do that. That for me is very beautiful. And always working with these outsiders and younger newcomers, I think sometimes makes me feel like I'm still can do things. I still can do things. If Anubhav Sinha, after so much mainstream work of 15 years,
Correct.
can
Yeah.
reinvent himself in such a
Correct.
absolutely delicious way.
Hmm.
So I'm like, it makes me so happy. Like yesterday or 2 days back, he put out a tweet. He's finished his new script. I was so jealous. I called him up. I said, "You can't just like show off like that because I'm struggling with my script." And he said, "I'm sending it to you to read it." And he sends me the script. And he's got such gall. But the thing is, it's beautiful because it challenges you. And he's challenged me. I'm like doing an all-nighter today. I've got my team. I'm saying, we're doing an all-nighter today. We have to finish our script. So
Right.
it
I
comes
want
from
to touch
people like
upon.
that.
I want to touch upon something that you just said. You said Anubhav sent you the script. I know that you do that very often. You share your script with
Yeah.
your. I mean, is there a community, Anurag? Is there a community of filmmakers? There was a time when
There was a time
people
I used to do
protected.
that. Yeah.
Correct, correct.
No. When I came into the industry, nobody showed anything to anyone.
Right.
And then we tried to create community. You remember, I used to show my films to
Yes.
you. I used to show my films
Correct.
to so many critics. And
Correct.
initially it was like, why are you showing it to us? What I said, no, nothing. Just see me, give me a review. I'm not going to make you a call saying that give me
Yeah.
kya mere ko reaction de
What
raha
did
hai.
you
I would
think?
never do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
And I started doing that with filmmakers. I would call Tigmanshu would come, Zoya would come, Rima Kakti would come. Sudhir always saw everything that I did. Hansal
Right.
saw, actors, some people saw. I would show that. Then it was kind of, it disappeared in a way. Like Bombay Bullet, I showed it to so many filmmaker friends of mine. But then it kind of disappeared. And I think now it has come back again. It's more because of Anubhav Sinha. Anubhav Sinha has become he's a new teenager in town.
Right.
So he's a teenager in town who has discovered himself, who suddenly like अरे मेरी मूंछ के बाल उग रहे हैं, जब नया नया मूंछ आती है ना बच्चों के, तो Anubhav is like this right now. So he's like after Mulk and things, he's so excited. He gets people together, and he watches. It's now his office has become the community place. So people come there, see films, exchange ideas. He'll share his script. He comes up with these things. So Anubhav is the new teenager who's doing things. We have passed the baton on to the younger lord, which is Anubhav Sinha.
Anubhav Sinha. Wow. Anurag, Sacred Games was the first original show from India to that Netflix sort of put this huge gamble on. And they bet on you, they bet on Vikram and you and the team there. I mean, what opportunities did Sacred Games and being on a platform like Netflix give you that you hadn't had before? I mean, the whole digital, the whole.
It changed everything. It just changed my life. It changed my life in many ways because, see, when we started Sacred Games, and it was mostly Vikram and Varun were at it, and I was shooting my other Mukkabaz and things. I came in and they kind of conned me again, and they said, like, ye karoge, and I was excited. And I started, and I was like, hello, matlab, like, what we are doing is being shown in India or is being shown worldwide? Then we realized it's being shown worldwide. So it was like, oh my God, this is like, we are first time on a platform. It's like running an Olympics, and you have to get a medal. You're representing the country. First web series shown worldwide, you're representing the country. That put us on our toes. And we did not anticipate even 10% of the success it saw. Our anticipation was not like that. And like every time when my film comes out, on the day of the release, the day before, I disappear. I always disappear. I get out because I don't want to, I leave. So, and I left. And this reaction was so humongous. The way it broke out, it just changed my life in a way that I realized all my audiences. I started realizing while we were shooting Sacred Games, because by then Netflix was coming into India. I had come into India. That suddenly, because 2016, I started 2016 or 17. Suddenly I started getting messages on Girl in Yellow Boots or Ugly. I'm saying like 4 years too late, people are watching my film. Then I realized people are seeing it on Netflix. And I started getting an idea, and I would call Vikram and I said, Vikram, do you realize that suddenly our films are being seen? Suddenly Udaan, everybody's seeing. Suddenly everybody's seeing all our films that they're not seen before. And on social media, we started having like more followers and people writing letters to us. We discovered this film, that film. And Masaan suddenly started finding audience so much more than it had. So we started anticipating but we didn't think out of India itna zyada hoga. Then when Sacred Games came out, and then it was world over, wherever you would go. The first time I remember Nawaz was shooting for Tanishtha, and he called from there, and Nawaz says, sir, either Rome everybody's calling me Gaitonde. So I'm like, and it was like, really? And my filmmaker friends from across, they started reaching out to me. And what it did was it enabled me, it enabled us that since we have that audience, it started getting us the right budget for the films that we wanted to make. The most difficult subjects we can make. The reach of audience is huge. Plus, the thing is, I am not going through the same trade pundits studio heads who are from this business that has been handled for centuries by families. Their understanding of cinema is very in inverted commas. This is what it should be. I'm not dealing with
Correct.
those people anymore. So I'm not dealing with people who are asking questions who's the star in it.
Right.
And my budget is not based on that. And I don't have to be answerable to the risks I'm taking. It has changed my life totally. It has totally changed my life in the sense. And today, I don't have to go to anyone to get my film made. Anyone.
Yeah.
I have to just travel to LA to drop my daughter, do 5 meetings, and I get my funding. I come back and I make my film. So I'm like, because my audience also, people are watching this work outside. So it has made me such a solid, secure person where I don't have to go and tell them, नहीं नहीं समझ में आ गया इस बार commercial film बनाऊंगा. I don't have to say that.
Correct. I'm going to open it out to the fans and the cinephiles who are on this, but I want to ask you one last question, and this is actually a question that is not about cinema. I want to ask you, Anurag, how important is it to have a life beyond the movies? Because one notices that you travel a lot for pleasure. You go diving. I know you do, and one has seen the TikTok videos. Occasionally, you'll make a TikTok video dancing with your daughter. I mean, how important is it for the sanity, for balance, to have other interests?
My other interests are like, it is important for me. Water is something that I'm very like swimming and diving is very important to me. My daughter is just the biggest bully and the manipulator. She can make me do anything. So if she makes me dance, then I dance. She makes me turn upside down, I'll do that. But the thing is, I love traveling. And I love traveling to film festivals. I'm not a tourist as much as I'm a film festival hog. And then it is like, I also must say that when I came to Melbourne in 2016 and had the discussion panel, the most enthu girl who was asking the question in that discussion panel became my most relevant assistant, and she wrote ghost stories later. I met her in your festival in Melbourne.
Lovely. Right.
So, like, traveling, and that's how you meet people. And then diving, and that's all I do. There's nothing more. Otherwise, I sit by myself. I can spend days by myself alone.
Right. So this lockdown hasn't been so bad for you.
It's been mixed.
Okay. Anurag, we've got film fans and your fans joining from Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Indonesia, Malaysia, and India. We've got a whole bunch of fans. We've got a few questions. We have time for a few questions. Sarayu Kuti, if Sarayu Kuti can be unmuted and she can ask a question.
Hi Anurag. My question is for someone who supports cinema from Kerala. I've noticed that you've really been quite vocal and supporting them. How do you think Malayalam cinema is changing the face of Indian cinema? And how are films that are so regional and so specific to the area and culture suddenly finding acceptance among others, suddenly being this big force in India?
I think at this given moment, Malayalam cinema is the most powerful cinema in this country, in the sense that the most interesting rooted voices are coming from Kerala. And world is also recognizing that. You see Malayalam cinema representing India more than other languages right now. And it's also because, like I always say, through the film, you get a sense of time and place. You get a sense of the world it inhabits. And filmmakers are extremely cinematic. And filmmakers are extremely intelligent and extremely philosophical. And they also know their audience and they know how to put it out there. And there's some filmmakers I get absolutely jealous about. Like, look at Lijo. He's so fearless. And he's such a great, honest friend. Like, Lijo doesn't like my film. Like, my last 1 or 2 films he's not liked. He calls me. He says, Anurag, you can do better. He keeps challenging. Then Rajiv Ravi, he didn't like. There's no dishonesty there. And I think that dishonesty is not also there between themselves. And that's how a community kind of builds itself up, which is what is so beautiful. And for me, it's always inspiring. Khali time, I will go pick up. Now I've started, Rajiv Ravi has made me a list of old Malayalam movies that to watch. He says, Abhi, you don't watch, you're only watching new ones. You have no idea what we used to do before Sheila.
Okay. Thank you. Can we take a question from Kauthar?
Hey Anurag, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I can hear you.
So you earlier spoke about you being interested in portraying a sense of reality, and I wanted to ask, how can you create a good balance between projecting our realities, but at the same time giving audiences a sense of an escape, but also something that's
Yeah.
aspirational?
Uh, I like one thing that I definitely don't try to do is make it aspirational, because I try to curb it as much as I can, because I like to project a certain kind of a realism, and realism is not doesn't mean it's absolutely real. It seems real, so hence we call it realism. I need to believe. I'm saying I could be doing the most fantastical thing and the most unreal thing, but if I don't believe it, then it's a waste. But I could be. Most important thing is I am believing in this moment or not. The other thing is, at the end of the screenplay, at the end of the film, was it satisfying or not is very different from if I'm in that moment and believing in this moment. So for me, whenever I'm shooting or doing anything, I want to believe, and that's the only thing I stick to. If there's one false note in anything, I'll do it again.
Thank you. Param Walia, if we can go to Param Walia, please.
Good evening, good afternoon, sir.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
so one piece of advice for screenwriters just starting out, like, so what piece of advice would you give to them?
I always say just write. The best way to write is just write. Just start writing. Don't think too much, and don't read till you have finished it. Finish a draft. Otherwise, you'll be stuck on page 1 to page 10. You'll never move beyond that. So when you write, what happens is you try to evaluate it. And when you evaluate it, you judge it against what is your idea of great cinema and what you aspire to be. And when that happens, you always will find what you're writing is much lesser in comparison. So you'll abandon it. So when you write, you just write and write till the end before you read it again. So what happens is, the magic that happens is, when you write till the end and then you read it, by the time you reach the end, you'll realize that later part of the writing is so organic and so much more incredible, and you have found something there that inspires you to go back, and then whatever you will abandon, you'll still find things to you'll have the answer to what to do it to make it right. But you need to go to the end before you come back to the beginning again. But if you keep reading every page after you've written, you'll not progress. You'll be stuck there.
If we can take a question from Ramiz Hassan.
Hello, Anurag sir. How are you?
Hi, Ramesh. Hi.
My question was, No Smoking is one of my favorite films, like, ever. How did the idea come of such a psychological thriller, and why did you pick Paresh Rawal as the antagonist? Because that was such a good casting.
See, the idea was always there. No Smoking actually was loosely based on a Stephen King short story that I did not know was a Stephen King short story unless I started narrating it to people. Because I heard the story from Ram Gopal Verma, because it was one of his favorite stories, and he did a take of on his own in Darna Mana Hai somewhere. So it was Ram Gopal Verma's favorite story, and he would tell this story to me all the time about a man who wanted to quit smoking, because Ram Gopal Verma didn't smoke at that time, and I used to smoke, and he used to have a problem with me. He says, step out in the balcony and smoke, and that's why he told me the story of this story, which was from, I think, a book called Cat's Eye. I did not know it was a Stephen King story. So what happened was, when my films got banned, I was looking for to make a movie which was like very metaphorical about what I was going through, and I found this very relatable, because a friend of one of my closest friends was Abbas Tyrewala, and he wrote songs in Panch and all that. And in the 5-6 years, every film Abbas Tyrewala wrote was a blog. He wrote Munna Bhai MBBS, Main Hoon Na, and whatnot. And he would come and tell me that you should, be more commercial, and you should go do this. Stop chasing your Black Friday. Stop chasing this. Stop chasing that. So I named the character after him, who suggests this guy to quit smoking, which was played by Ranveer Shori. So that character in the film was called Abbas Tyrewala, and became metaphorical about my journey with filmmaking, because everybody wanted me to, including my parents, wanted me to say, what kind of movies you want to make. Nobody wants to see that. I have gone through so much experience at that time where the whole world wanted to change my life, because they thought I was very intelligent, but I'm so lost, and somebody needs to save me from me. So that phase I went through. And that was also the time my marriage had broken up. That was also the time I was taken by the Pandits, and I did Shani ki Parikrama with oil on my body and lungi, because everybody said ki kisi ki nazar lagi hui hai. I went through that phase because my films were not coming out and my ideas people didn't buy and everything would get stuck. So I used the story of this man, the whole idea of like smoking is a bad habit. So the smoking became a metaphor for this person, which was me. And it all because of my writing. So the only closest metaphor I could get was because you hold a pen like this and you hold a cigarette the same way. So it became that. So it started from there. And then you go back and see it. Everything in my life is like things were so mixed up and confused, which is why it was like the wife and the secretary are the same people. My wife and my editor was the same person. And everything. And Abbas, I was actually named after Abbas Tyrowala. And everything that I was going through in my life became a metaphor for that film. So literally, it was just it was regurgitating, using an idea that already existed, and everything became metaphorical for me. It was just a fun thing to do because otherwise, that was my like writing a blog.
Thank you. If we can take a question from Linda Osterpieve, please.
The question is, would Raman Raghav have been more explicit if censorship in India wasn't an issue?
Yeah, in the sense like I actually got to do everything in Raman Raghav despite the censors. In the sense, the idea for me, the entire film was done for the last two scenes, last two chapters was the reason I made the entire film. Because initially the plan was to make the larger plan dream in life was to make a quadrilogy of films of Bombay, which was from different periods that gave a sense of how the journey from independence to the times we were living in. So we made Bombay, but next was to be Raman Raghav. Then we wanted to make a film from the story which became for the same subject they made Rustam, but we had a very different take on it, all from the way the tabloids connected these four films. And the fourth film was supposed to be of Lloyd's bank robbery. So when after Bombay had bombed, they told me I can't make Raman Raghav. So I used Raman Raghav as a metaphor for everything that was going on at that time. Like today, in today's time, when you look back and you see all that, the second last chapter in Raman Raghav, when he's talking about how every religion has come on the street and is like trying to showcase the strength because everybody's so insecure and all that, you'll see that where it'll start making sense why I made that film, because that has now come totally in the forefront. I started seeing it then. I started seeing the insecurity then. So whatever insecurity I was sensing, I put it into the character. So Raman Raghav for me is really not as much about a serial killer as much as it is a political explanation of a whole lot of stuff that was going on. Or about the police and the crime and how everything is so mixed up. So what we did in 2016 was trying to we use Nawazuddin's character to foretell what's going to happen. If you see the last two chapters, that would probably make more sense now. But that's the film I wanted to make. In the sense, I did not want to make the film to show the killings. I was never interested in showing the killings.
Thank you, Anurag. This was incredible. I feel like we've spoken so many times, and each time we speak, I still find that there is so much more to ask you because you have so much more to give. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This was wonderful that you opened your heart and you opened your your mind and your experiences, and you sort of shared with us such beautiful anecdotes. Thank you, and I hope that you will be at the festival. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah,
this
sure.
year, but
I love Melbourne.
Lovely.
I love Melbourne. I miss Melbourne. Thank you, Meetu. Where's Meetu? I can't see her.
Meetu's gonna.
Thank you so
in
much.
fact, I'm going to toss right back to Meetu Bamiklonge, who's the festival director, and thank you again. Thank you, Meetu. Please.
Thank you so much.
Anurag, thank you so much for coming. I love you, and you're just so amazing. And every time I see your name or your work, I feel so proud. Complete
Thank you so much.
And so love you, and hope to see you here very soon. And lots.
Thank you so much.
Not just me, everyone waiting. And
thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, who joined us today. Please keep an eye out for our next IFFIM film club. We've got lots and lots of exciting guests waiting, and a huge thank you and huge hug to Rajiv, who is as always incredible and been one of the pillars for the festival. Lots of love. Thanks, Anurag.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you everyone for joining today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.